Gbenga stood at the entrance of the Grand Hotel, staring out across the crowd of well-dressed people. It was his big day, the day he had waited for so long. Today, he was marrying Chioma, the woman of his dreams, the one he had chosen after his failed marriage to Silver. He couldn't wait to see Silver's face when she realized that he had moved on. The guests were murmuring in excitement, awaiting the arrival of the bride. A few familiar faces were scattered across the room, but Gbenga's mind was elsewhere. He had made a decision and it felt good. Silver, his ex-wife, had left him years ago when things fell apart. She had run off with nothing but her dignity, abandoning him when he was at his lowest. But he had risen from that, rebuilt his life, and now he was on top. Victor, his best friend, stood next to him. "Are you sure about this, Gbenga? You know, inviting Silver. It might not be the best idea." Gbenga gave a short laugh. "I want her to see what she missed, Victor. I want her to know that I moved on. I'm successful now. She needs to know that she didn't break me." Victor looked uncertain, but didn't say anything further. He had always known Gbenga to be the kind of person who thrived on proving people wrong. This wedding, this moment, was no different. He had invited Silver, and everyone knew it was to show her what she had lost. The door to the hall opened, and the sound of a Rolls-Royce engine roared outside. Gbenga's eyes widened. The car wasn't just any car, it was Silver's. The car rolled up to the entrance, and Gbenga's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Was Silver really here? Silver stepped out, not alone. 3 children followed her, triplets. A boy and 2 girls, all dressed immaculately in outfits that matched Silver's radiant emerald green gown. She looked incredible, too stunning for a woman who had been through the struggles that Gbenga thought he knew about. Her face, though, was unreadable. The crowd fell silent as Silver walked toward the entrance of the hall, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Gbenga felt a pang in his chest. This was not what he had expected. The triplets, his children, were supposed to be with him, not her. The anger began to rise within him. What was she trying to prove? His heart pounded. He had hoped for a moment of triumph, but now he wasn't so sure anymore. He was caught off guard by the way she carried herself, so confidently, so gracefully. The Rolls-Royce, the children, everything about her screamed success. And she had the nerve to show up here like nothing had happened. Chioma, his bride-to-be, stood by his side, her face frozen in shock. "Gbenga, who are they?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Gbenga clenched his jaw. "They are nothing. Just people from my past." But in truth, they were everything. They were his past, his mistakes, his regrets, and his deepest wounds. Seeing Silver again stirred up old emotions he had worked so hard to bury. This was supposed to be his moment, and now it felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Silver walked into the hall, the children trailing behind her. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. The guests' eyes were on her, on the car, on the triplets, on everything. They couldn't help but wonder what Silver was doing here, especially given the way Gbenga had spoken about her in the past. He had made it clear that she was nothing to him anymore, so why was she showing up today, making him the center of attention once again? Gbenga's chest tightened. The room seemed to blur, and his thoughts raced. He was supposed to be the star of this day, the one who had made it. But now, he felt like a fool, his confidence crumbling with every step Silver took toward the reception area. "What is she trying to do?" Gbenga muttered, his voice thick with frustration. Victor put a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe she's here to show you what you missed, Gbenga. Maybe she's here to make you regret the way you treated her." Gbenga shook his head. That couldn't be it. There was no way she could be so cruel, so calculating. But then again, he had underestimated Silver before. As Silver took her seat in the back, the triplets gathered around her. Gbenga's eyes followed them, their innocent faces making his heart ache. He should have been there for them. He should have fought harder, but instead, he let go. He let Silver take them, and now here they were, a living reminder of his failures. But there was something else, something deeper gnawing at him. He looked over at Chioma, who was still standing beside him. Her face was a mixture of confusion and anger, but there was something else in her eyes. Something darker. She was watching Silver with a hard gaze, and for a moment, Gbenga wondered if Chioma had planned for this day to turn out this way. He knew she had always been suspicious of his past with Silver, but to bring them here, to make this her show, was beyond what he had expected. Suddenly, Chioma turned to him. Her expression was cold, calculating. Why did you invite her, Gbenga? What exactly is this all about? Gbenga's mind raced. He had never seen this side of Chioma before. Chioma, this isn't what you think. I just wanted to show her that I've moved on. That's all. Chioma's lips twisted into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Is that what you think, Gbenga? That this is just about showing her? Or is there something else going on here? Gbenga felt a chill run down his spine. What was she insinuating? Was Chioma planning something of her own? Before he could say anything, the loud crash of glass shattering echoed across the hall. His heart skipped a beat. Silver's son, the triplets' oldest, had knocked over a glass table, sending a vase crashing to the ground. The sound rang through the hall, breaking the tension, but only for a moment. Gbenga's mind was still racing. What was going on? What did Silver really want today? As the staff scrambled to clean up the mess, the guests returned to their conversations, but the air was thick with uncertainty. Gbenga's chest tightened. The day was slipping from his control, and he wasn't sure how to stop it. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was yet to come. Silver had come for more than just to show him what he had lost. What had she brought with her? What was this day really about? Gbenga's mind churned as the sound of laughter and conversation filled the air. He looked up, his gaze meeting Silver's across the room. She was watching him, her eyes unreadable. And in that moment, Gbenga realized that this was not the end. It was only just beginning. The noise in the room continued to swell, but Gbenga's thoughts remained clouded. The crashing of the vase had been the perfect distraction, but for him, it didn't help ease the confusion that gripped his chest. Silver's arrival with the triplets had completely shifted the energy of the day, and now, he couldn't even focus on the smile Chioma had once flashed at him when they first met. The face she wore now wasn't one he recognized. Victor stood beside him, still trying to figure out what had just happened. He glanced from Gbenga to Chioma, trying to read the tension in the air. Gbenga, you should talk to her. Maybe find out what's really going on, he suggested, his voice low. But Gbenga wasn't listening. He had his eyes on Silver, who was seated at a distant table, speaking to a few people with the same grace she had always carried. But there was something about the way she held herself that made him uneasy. It was as if she had been planning something that went beyond just showing up. Gbenga, please, Victor urged, his hand now on his shoulder. Gbenga turned slowly to face his friend. I don't know what she's doing here, Victor. But I have to find out. I have to know what this is all about. I can't just let her ruin this day. Not today. Victor gave a knowing nod. All right. But remember, Chioma is your bride now. Don't let Silver mess with your head. Gbenga didn't respond. He turned away from Victor and started making his way toward the far end of the hall where Silver sat. He wasn't sure what he was going to say to her, but he couldn't just leave it like this. She had come here for a reason, and he was going to find out why. As he walked, he felt the eyes of the guests following him. Some were whispering, others just staring. His steps seemed to echo louder in his ears, each one feeling heavier than the last. He tried to shake the unease that weighed on him, but it didn't budge. When he finally reached Silver's table, she looked up at him, her face unreadable. For a brief moment, he forgot everything around him. It was just the two of them. She was as beautiful as ever. Older, yes, but the years had only made her more poised, more elegant. The triplets sat around her, eyes wide, silent as they stared at their father. You came, Gbenga finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Silver didn't immediately respond. She looked at him for a moment, her gaze softening before it hardened. You invited me, didn't you? Or are you asking me why I showed up? Gbenga clenched his fists. He didn't like the way she spoke, as if she knew exactly what he was thinking. I wanted you to see how far I've come. To see what I've built. Silver raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a small, almost amused smile. Is that what this is? A show? She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. "You're not the only one who's done well, Gbenga. You're not the only one who's moved on." Gbenga's heart skipped a beat. What was she saying? The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Gbenga wondered if he was missing something crucial. The triplets shifted in their seats, and one of them, the boy, stood up, tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Mama, can we go now?" he asked softly, his voice trembling. Silver's eyes softened as she turned toward her son. "Not yet, darling," she said gently, before looking back at Gbenga. "I need to finish what I came here to do." Gbenga's thoughts raced, but he didn't want to let the situation get to him. "What is it that you came here for, Silver?" "To show me that you're happy with your life." Silver's face flickered with something he couldn't place. It wasn't anger or sadness, just something deeper, something cold. "I didn't come to prove anything to you. I came because I needed to. For me. For my children." Before Gbenga could respond, a voice interrupted the moment. It was Chioma, standing beside him now. Her eyes were red-rimmed, a look of fury in her expression that only made Gbenga feel worse. She had been standing at a distance, watching the exchange. "What are you doing here, Silver?" Chioma's voice was ice-cold as she stared at the other woman. Silver's eyes flicked to Chioma, and for a moment, there was silence. Then Silver stood, her voice calm but unwavering. "I'm here because I want to see what you've done with my past, Chioma. I want to see if you've learned the lessons I left behind." The tension in the air was thick, and Gbenga could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea what Silver meant by that, but the words sent a shiver down his spine. What lessons had she left behind? What was she trying to say? Chioma's hands curled into fists. "Don't talk to me like that, Silver. You left him. You abandoned him, and now you think you can come here and act like nothing happened? Like you have any right to say anything?" Silver's face remained calm, but the undertones of what she was saying were becoming clearer. "I'm not here to start a fight, Chioma. I'm here because I need something that belongs to me, and you're standing in the way." Gbenga blinked, unable to process the sudden shift in the conversation. What was she talking about? What did she mean, standing in the way? But before he could ask, Silver turned, her eyes locking with his for just a second. There was something in them, a warning, maybe, but Gbenga couldn't place it. "I'll tell you everything you need to know, Gbenga. But not here. Not in front of everyone." His mind raced, but he couldn't say anything. His thoughts were jumbled, and all he could think about was how much he wanted to know what Silver meant. But there was something else, a gnawing sense of dread, like he was being drawn into a web he couldn't escape. Before he could speak, a loud crash echoed through the hall again, this time, a chair tipping over, followed by the frantic screams of one of the children. Gbenga turned quickly, his eyes wide with panic. The triplets were now standing, and the youngest girl was crying loudly. Silver was already rushing to her side, but it wasn't just the child's tears that caused the chaos, it was what they had seen. The room fell silent as the triplets' eyes focused on something in the distance. Something that made them gasp, their faces pale in horror. Gbenga's stomach dropped. "What is it?" he asked, barely able to hear his own voice. Silver's face turned ashen as she turned to look at the entrance of the hall. And there, standing in the doorway, was someone who should not have been there. Gbenga's world began to tilt as everything he had believed, everything he thought he knew, started to unravel. The sight before him felt like a nightmare, and he couldn't believe it was happening. But it was. And in that moment, Gbenga realized that the story he thought he was living was just the beginning of something much darker than he had ever imagined. What was Silver planning? And why had she brought the triplets here today? The questions piled up, but answers were nowhere in sight. Only more chaos, more confusion, and more fear. Gbenga had no choice now but to face whatever was coming next. But what would it mean for his wedding day? For his future? Only time would tell. But as the seconds ticked by, it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. Gbenga's heart raced in his chest as he watched the figure in the doorway. The tall man stood there, his shadow looming across the room. His features were partially hidden in the dim light, but the way the room went completely still made it clear that everyone knew who he was. Gbenga's throat went dry, his mind struggling to piece together the puzzle in front of him. The figure moved slowly into the room, his eyes scanning over the guests before locking onto Silver. She didn't react immediately. Instead, her gaze softened, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. It was as if the years between them had melted away in that one silent exchange. Chioma, who had been standing beside Gbenga, was the first to speak. Her voice was sharp, filled with disbelief. "Who is this?" Her words seemed to cut through the tension, pulling everyone's attention back to the man in the doorway. The man smiled faintly before responding, his voice low but confident. "I'm someone from Silver's past. Someone who has been waiting for the right moment to make himself known." He stepped further into the hall, his eyes scanning over the shocked faces of the guests. "And it looks like that moment has arrived." Gbenga's mind was spinning. He recognized the man's face, but his name didn't come to him immediately. The realization hit him a split second too late. This man, this stranger, was someone from Silver's life long before Gbenga had come into the picture. Silver, however, didn't seem surprised. She stood up from her seat, moving gracefully toward the man. "Victor," she said softly, almost like a whisper, "you're here." Gbenga's head snapped back. "Victor? This was Victor?" The man who had once been so close to Silver that Gbenga had been warned to stay away? The man who had mysteriously disappeared from her life years ago, leaving her with only painful memories? The same Victor who, according to rumors, had been the reason Silver had left Gbenga in the first place? It was all coming back to him now. But why was he here today? Was this another one of Silver's games? Had he come to ruin everything? Gbenga felt his blood boil. "What is this, Silver?" he asked, his voice rising as the weight of the situation began to sink in. "Who is he? Why is he here?" Silver didn't meet his gaze immediately. Her eyes were locked on Victor, her face a mixture of guilt and something darker. "He's someone from my past, Gbenga. A past that I never wanted you to know about." She paused, her lips trembling slightly. "Victor is the father of my children." The words hit Gbenga like a slap to the face. His heart stopped for a moment, and the room seemed to spin around him. The triplets, the children he had thought were his, weren't his at all. They belonged to Victor. Chioma's eyes widened in disbelief. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For a moment, the entire hall was silent. No one knew what to say, how to react. It was as if everything had been turned upside down in a matter of seconds. Victor, seeing the shock on everyone's faces, stepped forward. "It's true," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I was the one who left Silver, the one who disappeared from her life. But now, I'm here to claim what's mine." Gbenga's head swam with confusion, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. His children. How could Silver have kept this from him? How could she have let him believe they were his? The anger bubbled up inside him, a storm he could no longer contain. He took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You think you can just come back into our lives after all these years and take everything from me?" His voice shook with rage. "What are you trying to do, Victor? Make me look like a fool?" Silver's eyes flicked nervously between Gbenga and Victor. She opened her mouth to speak, but Victor beat her to it. "No one is trying to make anyone look like a fool," he said, his voice becoming sharper. "The truth is, I'm here because I owe Silver an apology. I left her when she needed me the most. And I've come to make things right, for her and for the children." Gbenga's breath caught in his throat. An apology? An apology for abandoning Silver and then coming back to claim her children? Was that all it took? Was that all Victor had to offer? "No," Gbenga shouted. "This is my wedding day. I'm marrying Chioma. This isn't the time for your lies, Victor. You've caused enough pain already. You don't get to come in here and rewrite the story just because it suits you now." The guests murmured amongst themselves, whispers of shock and disbelief spreading throughout the room. Chioma, still standing beside Gbenga, turned to him, her face pale and stricken. "Gbenga, she started, but her words were drowned out by the sound of Silver's voice. "I didn't want this to happen today, Gbenga," Silver said, her voice filled with sorrow. "I never wanted to hurt you, but you have to understand. I did what I did, because I thought it was the right thing for our children. I never wanted you to find out like this, but… Victor interrupted her again, stepping closer to Gbenga. You're angry, I understand that, he said, his voice calm but insistent. But there's more you need to know. Silver and I, what we shared wasn't just a mistake. It was the beginning of something that, in the end, we both regretted. Gbenga shook his head, unable to make sense of what he was hearing. His mind raced, but all he could focus on was the pain in his chest, the sense of betrayal that now clung to him like a second skin. He couldn't believe this was happening. Not on his wedding day. Not in front of all these people. You're not welcome here, Gbenga said, his voice tight with emotion. I don't care what you say, Victor. You're not a part of this anymore. You're not part of my life, and you never will be again. Victor's face remained calm, but his eyes flashed with something deeper, something Gbenga couldn't quite place. I'm not here for you, Gbenga. I'm here for Silver. For our children. You may not want to hear it, but the truth will always find its way out. Gbenga clenched his jaw. Leave. Now. Silver stepped forward, her hand gently touching Gbenga's arm. Please, Gbenga, don't do this. Let's talk. We need to talk. But Gbenga couldn't listen anymore. His emotions were overwhelming him, and all he could think about was getting away from this nightmare. He turned, his gaze locking with Chioma's, but she looked just as lost as he felt. The confusion on her face mirrored the storm inside him. As he walked away, leaving Silver and Victor behind, the guests began to murmur again, the weight of the moment sinking in. But Gbenga wasn't sure what hurt more, the truth that had been revealed, or the woman he had once loved being taken from him by his own decisions. What would he do now? What was left to salvage from the shattered pieces of his life? But there was one thing he knew for sure. This was far from over. The chaos was just beginning. Gbenga's mind was a whirlwind as he stepped outside into the cold night air. His breath came in ragged gasps, and the coolness of the evening only seemed to intensify the heat building inside him. He couldn't believe what had just happened. His wedding day had turned into a nightmare, and it wasn't even over yet. Chioma had followed him outside, but he wasn't sure what to say to her. He had barely processed the truth Silver had just dropped on him. Victor wasn't just some distant figure from Silver's past. He was a part of the children's lives. The triplets weren't his. They belonged to Victor. Gbenga, talk to me. Chioma's voice broke through his thoughts, but he didn't look at her. He kept his gaze fixed on the darkened horizon. I don't know what to say, Chioma. Everything has been a lie. Everything I thought I knew was wrong. His voice was hoarse, and he could feel the lump in his throat growing. He had never felt this helpless before. Chioma stepped closer, her hand on his arm. Gbenga, I know you're hurt. I know this is all overwhelming, but we need to talk. You can't just shut me out. He turned to face her then, his eyes full of confusion and pain. Shut you out? Chioma, he paused, his chest tightening. I didn't know they weren't mine. How could Silver do this to me? And now Victor. Chioma's expression softened, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. But you knew Silver was part of your past. You knew there were things she hadn't told you. Maybe this was inevitable. But Gbenga, she took a deep breath. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't expect to be standing next to you on our wedding day, only to watch it all fall apart. Gbenga swallowed hard, fighting back the rush of tears that threatened to spill. He didn't want to break down in front of her. Not like this. Not on a day that was supposed to mark a new beginning for them. I never wanted to hurt you, Chioma. But now, I feel like I'm drowning in all this. Chioma looked down, her fingers tracing the fabric of her dress nervously. I know. But this is your mess, Gbenga. You have to fix it. You have to face the truth. I've supported you through everything, but now, I'm not sure what to do. I don't know if I can be part of this anymore. The words hit him like a punch to the stomach. He hadn't expected her to say that. Not like this, not when he needed her the most. What are you saying? His voice faltered. Chioma, you can't leave me now. Not when everything is falling apart. Chioma shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I can't stay in a relationship built on lies, Gbenga. I can't watch you make excuses for Silver and Victor. I'm not some side character in your past drama. Gbenga staggered back, as if the wind had been knocked out of him. He wanted to yell at her, to tell her that it wasn't just Silver and Victor's fault, but he couldn't bring himself to. Chioma was right in a way. He had been so focused on proving himself to Silver, on showing her that he was better than he had been before, that he had neglected the one person who truly mattered now, Chioma. He wanted to fix things. He wanted to make it right. But how? Please, he whispered, his voice trembling. Please don't leave me. We can work through this. I love you, Chioma. I don't know what I'd do without you. Chioma wiped away a tear, her face a mixture of sadness and determination. I don't know, Gbenga. I need to think. I can't just ignore everything that's happened today. You've invited your past back into our lives, and I'm not sure I can live with that. There was a long pause as they both stood there in the cold night air, the distance between them growing wider with each passing second. Gbenga's heart sank further with every word she spoke, and yet, deep down, he knew she was right. How could he ask her to stay in a marriage when everything felt so wrong? When the foundation of their relationship was built on a lie? Chioma turned away, her hand slipping from his arm. I need space, Gbenga. I'm sorry, but I have to go. She didn't wait for his response. She walked away, leaving him standing in the dark alone. The echo of her footsteps seemed to mock him as he stood there, frozen. His world had just come crashing down, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. After a few minutes, he turned back toward the hotel. The music, the chatter, the laughter, it all felt so distant now. Everything that had felt so right only hours ago was now tainted with lies, betrayal, and regret. His heart felt heavy with the weight of everything that had happened, but he couldn't fix it. Not now. Not when everything was falling apart. He entered the hall, and the eyes of the guests immediately turned to him. There was a strange air of expectation, as though they were waiting for him to explain what had happened. But how could he? What was there to explain? He had no answers. And then, his eyes met Silver's across the room. She was standing with Victor, their heads close together, whispering. Her eyes locked onto his for a split second, and it was enough to send a chill down his spine. There was something in her gaze, a challenge, maybe, or a warning. He took a step toward her, but then he hesitated. What was he supposed to say? What could he say to her after everything that had happened? As if sensing his hesitation, Silver turned and began to walk away with Victor. Gbenga watched them go, the feeling of helplessness growing inside him. He had been playing a game he didn't understand, and now he was losing. The triplets stood quietly near Silver, but they didn't seem to notice the tension in the air. They were oblivious to the storm that had just torn through their parents' lives. They had no idea what was going on between their mother and their father, between Silver and Victor, and between Gbenga and Chioma. As Gbenga watched Silver disappear into the crowd, his mind raced again. What had she meant earlier when she said she needed something that belonged to her? What was she planning? What did she want? Gbenga knew that the answers wouldn't come easily. He was trapped in the web Silver had woven around him, and now he had no choice but to follow the path she had set for him, whether he was ready for it or not. As the night wore on, Gbenga found himself alone in the quiet corner of the hall. The guests had returned to their festivities, but he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he knew was slipping through his fingers. Chioma had left. Silver had returned. And Victor had just changed everything. But what was he supposed to do next? What was the right thing? And most importantly, what was Silver's next move? Gbenga's heart was heavy with questions, but there was one thing he was sure of. He couldn't stay in this place of uncertainty for much longer. He had to take control. He had to face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful it would be. But how? What did it even mean to take control anymore? The answers were nowhere in sight, but Gbenga knew he would have to face them sooner or later. The real battle was just beginning. The next few days were a blur of confusion, regret, and sleepless nights. Gbenga barely remembered the last few hours of his wedding day. After Chioma had left, he had tried to keep up appearances, but it was impossible. The party had slowly died down, the guests trickling out, leaving behind whispers and lingering glances. The joy of the day, which had been so carefully planned, evaporated as quickly as the last glass of champagne. And by the time he had gotten back to his apartment that night, everything he had worked so hard to build felt like it was falling apart. Silver's face kept haunting him. Her cold, unreadable gaze, the way she had appeared with the triplets and Victor, everything about her return felt like a slow-burning fuse. He had tried to push her out of his mind, but no matter how hard he tried, the thoughts kept coming back, more intense with each passing hour. It was early in the morning when the phone rang. Gbenga had barely slept, tossing and turning through the night. He picked up the phone, groggy and irritated. "Gbenga." Chioma's voice came through, shaky, but still carrying an edge of strength. "We need to talk." His heart sank. He hadn't expected her to call. He wasn't sure what he could say to her anymore. But there was something about her voice that made him feel as though this might be his last chance to salvage whatever was left between them. "Chioma, he started, but she cut him off. "I'll be at your place in an hour," she said. "Please don't run away from this. I need to know the truth, Gbenga. All of it." And then she hung up. Gbenga stared at the phone for a few seconds, the weight of the situation settling in his chest. He didn't know what the truth even was anymore. There had been so many lies, so many secrets. Silver had shattered everything, and now, Chioma needed answers. But what could he tell her? What was the truth? That he had been married to a woman who had kept him in the dark about his children? That his ex-wife, the woman he had thought was gone for good, had come back with a man who had been part of their lives all along? What was he supposed to say to Chioma now? He rubbed his temples, fighting the pounding headache that seemed to grow with each passing moment. His apartment felt suffocating. Everything reminded him of the life he had built for himself, before it all came crashing down. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Gbenga opened the door to find Chioma standing there, looking as beautiful as ever, though the pain in her eyes was undeniable. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into the wedding hall a few days ago, full of excitement and hope. This Chioma was different, hurt, confused, and searching for something. Searching for answers. And he didn't have any to give her. "Gbenga," she said softly, stepping inside. "I don't even know where to begin." Neither did he. He led her to the couch, where they both sat in silence for a long moment. The tension between them was thick, the words unspoken hanging in the air. Gbenga's mind raced. What could he say to make this better? How could he explain everything that had happened, everything that he had tried so hard to bury? "I don't know what to say, Chioma," he finally whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel right now." Chioma turned to face him, her eyes softening. "What happened, Gbenga? I need you to tell me the truth. About Silver, about the triplets, about everything." Gbenga took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had to face the truth. He couldn't keep hiding from it. "The children, they aren't mine, Chioma. Silver, she never told me the truth. The triplets, they belong to Victor, not me." Chioma's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. "What? But you—" She stopped herself, her face twisting in confusion. "How could she keep something like that from you? All this time, you thought they were your children?" Gbenga nodded, his throat tight. "Yes. I thought they were mine. But they aren't. I found out the hard way, when Silver showed up at the wedding with them, with Victor, and she just dropped the truth on me. And it broke me, Chioma. It shattered everything I believed about my life." Chioma stood up abruptly, her hands trembling at her sides. "You invited her to your wedding, after everything? You let her come and tell you this, in front of me? You let her destroy everything we had?" Gbenga's chest tightened. "I didn't invite her to destroy anything, Chioma. I wanted her to see that I was happy, that I had moved on. But I didn't know she was going to drop that bomb on me. I didn't know she'd come back with Victor and the children. I didn't know she was going to pull me into this mess again." Chioma shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "You're still in love with her, aren't you? After everything she's done to you, you're still not over her. I can't be a part of this, Gbenga. I can't stand here and watch you keep letting her control your life." Gbenga felt the sting of her words, but he couldn't deny the truth in them. Deep down, He knew that Silver had always held a piece of his heart. He had never fully let go of her. And now, in the wake of everything that had happened, he wasn't sure what that meant for his future. Was he supposed to let Chioma go too? Was he supposed to try to rebuild his life with someone who wasn't a part of his past? Chioma walked toward the door, her back to him. I need to go, Gbenga. I need space to think. I don't know what I'm doing here anymore. Chioma, please, Gbenga's voice cracked, and he reached out for her. Don't leave. Not like this. Not when everything is falling apart. But Chioma didn't turn around. She opened the door, pausing for just a moment before she spoke again. You have to figure this out, Gbenga. You have to decide what kind of man you want to be. And I can't wait around for you to do that. And then she was gone. Gbenga stood there, the silence in the apartment suffocating him. He felt as though everything had slipped through his fingers. His marriage, his family, his future, it was all gone. Everything was unraveling, and he didn't know how to stop it. He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. The tears he had been holding back finally came, spilling over as the weight of his mistakes crushed him. And then, as he sat there, trying to make sense of everything, his phone buzzed. He wiped his tears and looked down at the screen. It was a message from Silver. We need to talk, Gbenga. I have something important to tell you. Meet me at the old house. Gbenga's heart raced again. What could she possibly want now? What more could she have to say? His mind screamed at him to ignore it, to walk away from this whole mess. But something deep inside him told him he couldn't. Not until he had the answers. Not until he knew what Silver had been hiding all along. He quickly typed a response. I'll be there. And just like that, he was once again pulled back into Silver's web. What was she planning? What did she want to tell him? Gbenga didn't know, but he was about to find out. And with every step he took toward that old house, he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Gbenga's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he drove through the darkened streets toward the old house. The message from Silver had thrown him into a state of confusion, and he wasn't sure what to expect. The house was a place from his past, one that had once held so many memories, both good and bad. It was where he and Silver had built a life together before everything crumbled. Now, it felt like a distant echo, a reminder of a time when everything was simpler, before betrayal, secrets, and pain clouded his every decision. As he pulled up to the house, he hesitated for a moment, staring at the familiar front door. The light was on in the window, casting a faint glow that seemed to beckon him inside. His heart raced again. What was Silver going to tell him? What could she possibly have to say now, after everything that had already happened? He took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, the cool night air biting at his skin. The silence around him was unnerving, but he knew he had to go inside. He had to face whatever it was that Silver was holding back. The door creaked open as he reached for the handle, and he stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The house felt strange now, like a shell of what it once was. The familiar scent of Silver's perfume lingered in the air, but everything else seemed hollow. The memories of their time together, the laughter, the arguments, the moments of love, they were all buried in the past, overshadowed by the lies and betrayal that had come after. Gbenga. Silver's voice called out from the living room, pulling him from his thoughts. He walked toward her voice, his heart thudding in his chest. She was sitting on the couch, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Her face was calm, almost too calm, as if she had made peace with whatever was coming. You came, she said softly, her eyes meeting his. I didn't think you would. I don't know why I'm here, Silver, Gbenga replied, his voice tight with emotion. But you said you had something important to tell me. Silver nodded slowly. I do, she said, her voice tinged with sadness. But first I need you to understand something. What happened between us, it wasn't just about the children. It was about us. And I'm sorry for the way things turned out. Gbenga took a step forward, his mind racing. Sorry? After everything, you're just sorry? The anger in his voice surprised him, but he couldn't help it. The wounds were still raw, and Silver's calm demeanor only made him feel more betrayed. I didn't want to hurt you, Gbenga, she said, her voice softening. But I didn't know how else to handle it. I was trapped in my own guilt and fear. And when I left, I thought I was protecting you. But I see now that I made everything worse. Gbenga swallowed hard, trying to push down the wave of emotions threatening to overtake him. What are you trying to say, Silver? What's the truth? Silver hesitated, then took a deep breath. The truth is, I've always loved you, Gbenga. But I couldn't let you love me anymore. Not after what happened. Not after I left. I thought it would be better for you to move on, to find someone else. But I never stopped loving you, even when I walked away. Gbenga felt a sharp pain in his chest as her words hit him. It was exactly what he had feared all along. Silver's love had always been there, lingering in the shadows, even when he had tried to move forward. But it didn't make sense. Why had she come back now? Why had she dragged him through all of this? You're telling me all of this now? Gbenga asked, his voice low. After everything we've been through, after you left me, you think this will fix things? Silver looked at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears.
No, Gbenga.
I don't think it will fix things. I just need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to destroy what we had. I was scared. Scared of what would happen if I stayed. Scared of what you would become if you knew the truth. And I see now that I was wrong. Gbenga clenched his fists, struggling to contain his anger. And what about the triplets, Silver? What about the fact that you kept them from me? That you let me believe they were mine, when they never were? Silver's face faltered, and she lowered her gaze. Victor was part of their lives long before you.
I thought you knew that.
But I never told you. And I should have. I should have told you everything, but I didn't. I didn't trust you enough to handle the truth. I didn't think you could handle it. Gbenga's eyes burned with fury. You didn't trust me? You didn't trust me enough to give me the truth? That's why you left. You couldn't even give me a chance to be a part of their lives? His voice cracked, and the pain of all these years came flooding back. I was wrong, Silver whispered. I see that now. I was wrong to keep them from you. I was wrong to keep them from us. Gbenga felt his world shaking beneath him. For years, he had convinced himself that he had been betrayed by Silver, that he had been abandoned without a reason. But now, he realized that she had never fully left him. She had only kept him at arm's length, hiding the truth from him because she thought it was what was best. And now, she was asking for forgiveness. But was it too late? He shook his head, trying to process everything. Silver, I don't know what you want from me. I don't know how to move forward after everything that's happened. You've pulled me into this web of lies, and now, everything is falling apart. Silver stood up, her face pleading. I don't expect you to forgive me, Gbenga. I don't even expect you to want me back. But I need you to understand that I never stopped caring about you. I never wanted to hurt you. And I'm not asking for anything from you except that you know the truth. The truth about the children, about why I left, about everything. Gbenga's mind was spinning. What was he supposed to do now? What was the right thing to do? He had tried to build a life with Chioma, but now everything was uncertain. Silver had returned with a truth he wasn't prepared to hear. The triplets, his children, they weren't his. And yet they were. They had always been his in his heart. I don't know what to do with all of this, Gbenga muttered, his voice trembling. I don't know how to fix what's broken. Silver's eyes softened with understanding. You don't have to fix it, Gbenga. You just have to face it. And whatever you decide, you can't keep running away from it. You have to make peace with it. Gbenga looked at her for a long moment, trying to process her words, to understand the full weight of what she was saying. Could he really make peace with the past? Could he ever truly let go of the anger and betrayal? The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Gbenga didn't know what to say, what to do. He felt lost, as though everything he had worked for, his marriage, his future, had been swept away in the tide of this revelation. Silver stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out. I know this is hard, Gbenga, but we need to find a way forward. Not for me, not for you, but for them, for the children. Gbenga's heart tightened as he thought about the triplets. His children. They weren't his by blood, but they were his in every other way that mattered. But what was he supposed to do now? What did he owe Silver? What did he owe his future? The answers didn't come easily. And as the seconds ticked by, Gbenga realized that this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey. The days that followed Silver's revelation were the longest Gbenga had ever experienced. The weight of the truth hung over him, thick and suffocating, making it impossible to focus on anything else. He couldn't escape the constant question in his mind. What now? His relationship with Chioma was shattered beyond repair. She hadn't reached out since their confrontation, and Gbenga hadn't been able to bring himself to call her. The guilt weighed heavily on him. He had let everything slip through his fingers because of his inability to be honest with her, to be honest with himself. The things Silver had told him, about her love for him, about the children, about Victor, had broken something deep inside him. The triplets, though, were the hardest part to deal with. He hadn't seen them since the wedding day, when they had stood there, silent and unaware of the chaos that was unfolding around them. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their innocent faces, the boy with his deep brown eyes, the twin girls with their matching smiles. How could he have thought they were his for all these years? How could Silver have kept such a monumental secret from him? But now, more than ever, he felt a pull toward them. They were his children in every way that mattered. His heart ached for them, for the time he had lost, for the things they would never understand about what had happened between their parents. It was a quiet afternoon when the doorbell rang again. Gbenga had spent most of the day pacing his apartment, lost in thought, unable to get any rest. He didn't know who was on the other side, but he had a feeling it wasn't a random visitor. His stomach tightened as he walked toward the door. When he opened it, there stood Silver, with the triplets at her side. "Can we talk?" Silver asked softly, her eyes searching his face. She seemed so different now, vulnerable, almost broken. The confident, cold woman who had come back into his life only days ago now looked tired and worn, as though the burden of their past had finally caught up with her. Gbenga stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. The sight of the triplets tugged at his heart, but the anger and confusion he felt towards Silver still lingered, making it hard for him to even look her in the eye. "Why are you here, Silver?" he asked, his voice rough. "What do you want from me?" Silver glanced down at the children, who were standing silently behind her, their innocent faces reflecting a quiet sense of curiosity. "I know I've made a mess of everything, Gbenga," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need to fix this. For them. And for you." Gbenga felt his chest tighten. For them? The children were standing there, and yet he couldn't seem to find his voice. What could he say to them? What could he say to Silver, who had kept him in the dark for so long? "I'm listening," he said, finally stepping aside to let them in. Silver entered slowly, the triplets following her, their eyes darting around the apartment, taking everything in. Gbenga closed the door behind them and led them to the living room. The children sat down on the couch, their little hands folded in their laps, while Silver took a seat across from him. "We need to talk about the triplets, Gbenga," Silver began, her eyes fixed on him. "I've kept so much from you, and I know it's destroyed everything we had. But I can't keep pretending anymore." Gbenga sat down across from her, his heart hammering in his chest. He wanted to shout at her, to tell her how angry he was, but the presence of the children made it impossible. "Why didn't you tell me, Silver?" he asked, his voice strained. "Why didn't you tell me they weren't mine?" Silver's face softened. "I was scared, Gbenga. I was scared of losing you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to tell you the truth. I never thought you could accept them as your own." Gbenga's mind raced. He had been so sure, so convinced that the triplets were his, that they had been part of his life. And yet, here they were, a constant reminder of the lies that had been built around them. "And now?" Gbenga asked, his voice quieter. "What now, Silver?" Silver's eyes flickered to the triplets before meeting his gaze. "I want you to be a part of their lives, Gbenga. I know it's not easy. I know you can't just step in and be their father after everything that's happened. But I'm asking you to try. I want them to know that they're loved by more than just me. I want them to know that there's a future for them with you in it." Gbenga felt his heart twist. He didn't know if he could do this. He didn't know if he could take on the responsibility of being a father to children who weren't his by blood, who had been kept from him for so long. But the more he looked at them, the more he realized that they had already taken root in his heart. "Why should I?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "After everything? After what you've done to me? Why should I even care?" Silver's face crumpled in sorrow. "Because they're innocent, Gbenga. Because they need you. And I need you to help me raise them. I can't do it alone anymore. I need someone who understands that they deserve more than what I've been able to give them." Gbenga's eyes flicked to the children again. They were sitting there, so calm, so unaware of the weight of the conversation happening around them. The boy caught his eye for a moment, and Gbenga felt a flicker of connection, something deep inside him that made him want to reach out. He sighed, rubbing his face. "This is too much, Silver. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know where to start." Silver reached forward, her hand trembling slightly as it rested on the table. "I'm not asking you to fix everything, Gbenga. I'm just asking you to be there for them. Be there for me if you can. Help me give them the family they deserve." Gbenga was silent for a long time, weighing her words in his mind. He wasn't sure if he could ever forgive her for what she had done to him, but the idea of being part of their lives, the triplets' lives, began to sink in. The room was quiet for several moments, the only sound being the soft breathing of the children. Finally, Gbenga looked up at Silver. "I'll try," he said, his voice barely audible. "But I can't promise anything. I don't know if I can be their father, Silver. I don't know if I can give them what they need." Silver's face softened, and she nodded. "I understand, Gbenga. I don't expect miracles. I just need you to try.
For them.
For us." Gbenga stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the darkened city. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if he could step into the role Silver wanted him to play. But as he glanced back at the triplets, sitting quietly on the couch, he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. The journey wasn't finished. And somehow, he had to find a way to move forward, even if it meant facing the pain of the past. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he couldn't turn his back on it now. Not when there was so much at stake. And as the evening stretched on, Gbenga made a quiet vow to himself. He would try. He would try for the children, for Silver, and for whatever family they could still become. But he had no idea where this road would take him. And that uncertainty gnawed at him, but it was the only way forward. And just as he turned back towards Silver and the triplets, a knock on the door interrupted the moment. Gbenga walked toward the door, his heart pounding. He had barely begun to process Silver's request, her plea for him to try and be a part of the triplets' lives, when the knock came. He glanced back at Silver, who was sitting quietly on the couch, her eyes filled with quiet hope. The children, too, had remained still, sensing the tension in the room. Who could it be at this hour? Gbenga's mind raced as he reached for the door. When he opened it, he was met with a face he hadn't expected, Chioma. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed as though she had been crying, and her presence hit Gbenga like a punch to the gut. What was she doing here? After everything, after walking out on him, after the pain he had caused her, why would she come back now? Chioma? Gbenga's voice trembled as he stepped aside to let her in. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she glanced past him into the room, her gaze landing on Silver, who sat still, looking equally surprised. The triplets remained unaware of the tension building between the adults. "I need to talk to you, Gbenga," Chioma said, her voice steady but strained. "Alone." He looked back at Silver, who gave him a subtle nod, understanding that the conversation wasn't meant for everyone just yet. "I'll step outside," she said quietly, her voice soft but purposeful. The moment Silver left the room, Chioma stepped further inside, her eyes locked on Gbenga with a mixture of hurt and determination. "I didn't think I'd be here again, Gbenga," Chioma started, her voice thick with emotion. "But after everything, after what happened with Silver and those kids, I just couldn't stay away." Gbenga swallowed, trying to read the emotion in her eyes. He had thought their conversation in his apartment had been their last. "What do you mean, Chioma? What are you doing here?" Chioma took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't know how to fix what happened between us. But I need you to know that I never wanted to walk away. I couldn't keep pretending like nothing had changed. I thought I could live with the lies, but I can't anymore, Gbenga."
Not after what I saw today.
Not after seeing you with her. With the kids. Gbenga's heart sank. Chioma, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't plan for Silver to show up like that, and I never intended to hurt you. She shook her head, tears now threatening to fall. I know, Gbenga. I know you didn't plan it, but it doesn't change the fact that I was in love with someone who couldn't be honest with me. And now I see you with Silver, with the children, and I don't know where I fit into all of this anymore. I don't know who you are anymore. Gbenga felt his chest tighten as he tried to find the right words. Chioma, I don't know what I'm doing either. Everything has been turned upside down. I've spent years trying to forget Silver, and now I have to face this reality I wasn't ready for. Chioma's voice was barely above a whisper. But you've always loved her, haven't you? Even when you said you were done with her, a part of you always wanted to go back. I see it now. I see it in your eyes. You haven't moved on from her. And I can't be with someone who's still stuck in the past, Gbenga. His heart shattered at her words, but he knew she was right. She had always known him better than he knew himself. I never stopped loving her, Chioma. I don't know how to explain it. I thought I could move on, I thought I could be with you, but it's all so complicated. Chioma's face crumpled in pain. I can't be a part of this anymore, Gbenga. I thought I could wait. I thought I could be patient, but I can't. I won't be someone's second choice. I won't wait around for you to decide what you want. Gbenga reached out for her, but she stepped back, shaking her head.
No.
I've made up my mind, Gbenga. I need to walk away from this.
From you.
From everything. She turned and walked toward the door, each step pulling her further away from him and from the life they had once dreamed of together. Gbenga stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The weight of her words crushed him, and he felt his entire world collapse around him. Chioma, the woman he had loved and hoped to build a life with, was gone. She had walked out the door, leaving him with nothing but regrets and unanswered questions. As the door clicked shut behind her, Gbenga sank down onto the couch, his mind spinning. This was the consequence of everything. His inability to make a decision, to face the truth of his past, had cost him everything. But just as he thought the storm had passed, he heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching again. Silver had returned, standing in the doorway with the children behind her, watching him with wide, innocent eyes. There was no going back now. The battle for his future had just begun, and the questions kept multiplying. Could he heal the wounds he'd caused? Could he rebuild the pieces of his life? Or would he be left to face the consequences of his choices alone? But as the silence stretched on, Gbenga knew one thing for certain. He wasn't ready for what was coming next. The chaos was far from over. Gbenga sat in the quiet of the living room, the weight of the past few days settling heavily on his shoulders. Chioma's departure had left him in a state of numbness. The woman he thought he could build a life with had walked out of the door, and the truth Silver had revealed only complicated things further. His thoughts were a tangle of confusion, anger, and sadness. The triplets, who had been silently sitting on the couch, seemed oblivious to the storm that had just passed through their lives. They were children, after all, and they had no idea what had been happening between the adults in their lives. They only knew that their father, someone they had come to trust and love, was now standing at a crossroads. Silver, who had been standing by the door, watched him closely. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something about her that made Gbenga feel uneasy. She had always been a mystery to him, and now, more than ever, he realized just how little he truly knew her. She had always kept things hidden, buried beneath layers of secrets and half-truths. "We need to talk," Silver said softly, her voice breaking through his thoughts. Gbenga didn't respond immediately. What more could she possibly have to say? What was there left to discuss? He had spent years with Silver, and now, all he felt was betrayal. But despite the anger burning inside him, something in his chest told him that this conversation, whatever it was, might be his last chance to find some sort of closure. He nodded, finally looking up at her.
All right.
Talk. Silver took a step forward, her eyes briefly meeting his before she turned to look at the triplets, who were now playing quietly with some toys on the floor. She sighed deeply before speaking again. "I never wanted to hurt you, Gbenga. But I've done it.
I see that now.
I've ruined everything. Gbenga's chest tightened, but he didn't say anything. He had heard enough apologies from Silver over the years. What could she possibly say now that would make any of it right? There's something you need to know, Silver continued, her voice trembling. I didn't leave you just because I wanted to. I left because I thought it was the only way to protect you. I thought you couldn't handle the truth, about Victor, about the triplets, about everything. I was wrong, and I see that now. Gbenga swallowed, his throat dry. So, what now? You think you can just come back into my life and pretend like nothing happened? Silver shook her head, her eyes filled with regret.
No.
I'm not asking for forgiveness, Gbenga. I'm asking for a chance, just a chance to make things right. For the children. For all of us. Gbenga looked at her, searching her face for any hint of truth. Was she genuine? Or was this just another attempt to control the narrative, to manipulate him into believing that everything could go back to how it was before? I don't know if I can give you that chance, Silver, he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. Not after everything. Not after you've kept me in the dark for so long. The silence between them stretched, thick with unspoken words. Silver took a deep breath and nodded. I understand. I don't expect you to trust me right away. But the children, they need stability. They need both of us. I can't do this alone, Gbenga. Gbenga's heart ached as he looked at the triplets again. They were playing, laughing, their innocent voices a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing in the room. Could he really turn his back on them? Could he walk away from the one thing that still had a chance of making his broken life whole? I'll try, Gbenga said quietly. But I can't promise anything. Not yet. I need time to figure this out. Silver's eyes softened. That's all I'm asking for.
Time.
For all of us. Just as Gbenga was about to speak again, the sound of a car engine revved outside, followed by the screech of tires. A familiar voice echoed from the driveway. Gbenga. They all turned to see Victor standing outside, his face filled with urgency. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, their faces grim. Victor's expression was one of determination as he walked toward the door. I need to talk to you, Victor said, his eyes locking onto Gbenga's. This isn't over. There's more you need to know. Gbenga's stomach dropped. What now? Could this day get any more complicated? He looked back at Silver, who was now standing beside him. Her expression was unreadable, but he could see the faintest tremor in her hands. Victor had come to the house to settle things once and for all. But what did he want now? What more was there to uncover? Gbenga braced himself for the storm that was about to hit. The final piece of the puzzle was about to be revealed. Gbenga stood frozen, his eyes locked on Victor, who was now at the doorstep, flanked by 2 men. The atmosphere in the room grew tense, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Silver, standing beside him, looked equally uneasy, her face pale as she stared at the man who had been part of their past, a past that now seemed like a tangled web he couldn't escape. What is this about, Victor? Gbenga asked, his voice steady, but a deep sense of foreboding gnawed at him. Victor didn't waste time with pleasantries. His eyes were fixed on Gbenga, full of purpose. There's more you don't know. About the triplets, about Silver, about everything. I didn't want to bring this up, but it's time you knew the full truth. Gbenga felt a chill run through him. The last few days had been an emotional roller coaster, and now, just when he thought he could begin to piece his life together, here came another bombshell. He looked at Silver, who had remained silent, her eyes flicking nervously between him and Victor. She hadn't said anything. It was clear that whatever Victor was about to say, she hadn't shared it with him. Go ahead, Gbenga said, his tone cool, though his heart raced. Tell me everything. Victor stepped inside, motioning for his men to remain outside. They exchanged a brief glance before entering the living room, the tension in the air palpable. I wasn't just a part of Silver's life, Gbenga, Victor began, his voice low and grave. I was the one who set everything in motion. You see, the triplets, they were never really just mine or Silver's.
We weren't just a family.
There was a bigger picture here, something you never knew. Gbenga's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what Victor was saying. What did he mean by a bigger picture? The pieces were already scattered, but Victor's words only made the puzzle more complicated. "Victor, just get to the point," Gbenga said, his patience fraying. "What are you talking about?" Victor hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I'm talking about the reason why Silver left you in the first place. It wasn't just because of me. It wasn't just about the kids. Silver," he paused, his eyes flicking towards Silver. "She had no choice. I'm not just some ex-lover. I'm the one who was behind your financial ruin, Gbenga. I was the one who made sure you couldn't have the life you wanted. I was the one who made sure you lost everything." Gbenga's world seemed to tilt. The words felt like they were coming from a distant place, a nightmare that he couldn't escape.
What?
"What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Silver's face twisted with guilt, but she remained silent, unwilling to meet his gaze. Victor stepped closer, his eyes burning with a cold intensity. "You've been playing the victim, Gbenga, but the truth is you never saw the game I was playing. I made sure you lost. I knew everything about you, your weaknesses, your vulnerabilities. And I used them against you, all because I wanted Silver back." Gbenga's knees felt weak beneath him. His mind was reeling. All this time, he had thought Silver was the one who had betrayed him, the one who had caused his downfall. But now, Victor was telling him it had been part of a larger, more sinister plan. You destroyed me?" Gbenga whispered, his voice barely audible, the hurt and disbelief evident in his tone. Victor nodded, the smirk on his face slowly fading as he watched Gbenga absorb the weight of his words. "I did more than destroy you. I ensured you'd never be the man you wanted to be. And now, after all this time, it's time for the final part of my plan to unfold." Gbenga took a step back, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He wanted to scream, to lash out, but the shock was too great. He had been manipulated, used as a pawn in a game he hadn't even known he was playing. "What do you want now, Victor?" Gbenga asked, barely able to form the words. "What do you expect me to do with all of this?" Victor's eyes narrowed. "I don't expect you to do anything. I've already won. The truth has come out, and now you'll have to deal with the consequences of everything that's happened. But just remember, Gbenga, I never lost control. Not once." Silver stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Gbenga, please. I never wanted any of this. I was caught in something that was beyond my control. I made mistakes, but I did it all for the children. I never wanted to hurt you." Gbenga's eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, he saw the pain in her eyes. The woman who had left him, who had kept him in the dark, was finally admitting to some of her faults. But it was too late. The damage had been done. And now, he was left to pick up the pieces of a life that had been shattered by betrayal and lies. "I can't do this anymore," Gbenga said, his voice hoarse, his chest tightening with emotion. "I can't keep fighting battles that aren't mine to fight. I'm done, Silver. I'm done with you. And I'm done with Victor." He turned away from them both, his heart heavy with the realization that the life he had once known was gone. There was no going back to what had been. All that was left now was the wreckage. Victor's voice called out behind him. "You can walk away, Gbenga, but you can never escape the truth." Gbenga didn't respond. He kept walking, his feet taking him further away from the people who had once been part of his world. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the past, and all of its broken pieces, locked inside. As he stepped into the cold night, a sense of finality washed over him. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: he had to start over. For the sake of his peace, for the sake of the children, and for his own sanity, Gbenga knew he had to find his way forward. And as the night swallowed him whole, he realized that this was his new beginning.